So in a comment recently, Dan Mill 23 made an excellent suggestion that I briefly explain some of the inner workings of science, specifically peer review. And I really thought that was a great idea, and I'm going to do that now. Peer review it's definitely in the top of the most important parts of the scientific method, the modern scientific method, because what it really determines is how much faith you can put in this particular researcher's work. None of us have time to go through and review the volumes and volumes of data that the researchers collected and analyzing it ourselves. We trust that the reviewer, or that the author and then the reviewers knew the statistics, know the relevant literature in the field, know all of these things enough to catch something that may be false, or to catch something that needs to be clarified and alter it. So I'm going to start with the first part. Now everybody kind of knows, you would have it drilled into you in school about, the scientific method, hypothesis experimentation and such. When you become a scientist, there are lots of non-professional scientists out there. You have to start publishing your work. If you don't publish it, it doesn't exist. This is one of the things that people don't really understand. You get, like in movies and stuff, the mad scientist living in an underground bunker doing secret research isn't really a scientist, mad or otherwise. If you're not publishing it, if your peers are not seeing it, it doesn't exist. It's that plain and simple. If you don't publish frequently, you kind of you sort of disappear from the field too as well. So it's kind of interesting. It's very competitive in that sense of the word. And that's not, I don't want to make sure. One of the things about this reason I think this video might be important is that a lot of or false science, pseudoscientific people, specifically intelligent design or creatortionists, like to make false statements about the peer-reviewed process in an attempt to play on the public's ignorance of this process, to make their claims sound stronger than they really are. So anyway, okay, I'll get back to my topic. Sorry. So you do a study. You've done an experiment. Prior to doing that experiment, presumably you've written a proposal. A proposal either to get grant money, to get permission from your institution to proceed with your experiment, or maybe just for your own, if you're doing it in your basement, which is, there's nothing wrong with doing science in your basement, telling yourself how you're going to proceed, exactly what you're going to do. And that means specifically what statistics you plan on using to analyze it. All of that should be done. You should choose your stats before you start even collecting any data at all, and that's a really important lesson. I see students messing that up so often, not knowing any better, and they give themselves more work than they need to. So you choose you have your stat. You did your experiment. Now your experiment's done. You need to write it up. You need to report it. So what do? Typically, the first step is choosing a journal. And this is really important because you want to aim high. You want to pick a journal with the most readership, simply because the more people that read your study, doesn't mean it's more important or more valid, but the more important it is scientifically. I guess it's kind of like the subscriber thing on YouTube here. The more people that are seeing you, the more prestigious it is. Even if you may be producing crap, but if 20,000 people are looking at your crap, it means something. And in science, you want to aim for the biggest journals with the most readership. And this also means that you're more likely to get read by people that can use your data, that are working in, and that's really the importance behind it. It's not like a popularity contest necessarily. I didn't mean it to sound that way. So you pick journals like Science and Nature have the largest readership in the world of scientific journals. But they also reject the most papers. So you submit. Anyway, the point is you choose a journal. Okay, I'm getting off topic here. You choose a journal, and then you write your paper based on the standards that journal requires. That's really, really important, and this messes people up so often. Journals have a page, I'll put up a link for Ecologies, for example, where they have instructions for authors, it's instructions for submission, and they say exactly what they require. That can be so specific, not always, but it can be specific. It can be what font they want to see your paper in, exactly what font to write it in, what format they want you to submit it, one hard copy, one electronic copy. But it can be specific. It could be, we want 3 hard copies and we want 3 electronic copies on 3.5-inch floppy disks, and we want it in WordPerfect 2.0 or less. And you might look at it and go, that looks fucking stupid. Doesn't matter what you think about it. If that's what the journal requires, you follow their format, because this is the first step in peer review is that your envelope containing your manuscript and your 3.5 floppies or whatever you submitted it on comes into the office of the journal. It's opened up. They have a person who opens up, goes, oh, we have a submission. First step. Usually not even the editor of the paper itself, the journal itself. They look at it and they go, oh, they didn't follow format. They didn't. Their citation format didn't put a comma in between author and date. And that's the end of your. That's it. That can be it. They can round file your paper or send it back to you with rejected across it, and that's it. It doesn't matter how great your science is. You don't follow journal format. That's the way they weed out people that aren't really serious about submitting their stuff to this journal, and they are usually so anal about this. Okay. After this process, if it didn't already, it goes to the editor. The editor looks at it. Now the editor will look at it and say, this paper has some merit. I'm going to send it on to the next step in peer review. Or he may say, rejected. Same thing again. Reject. This paper's a bunch of crap. I'm not going to waste peer reviewers' time. Or he may reject it with what they call rejection without prejudice, where they reject it, send it back to you, and say, there's something good in here, but you need to revamp it from head to toe, because we're not going to waste reviewers' time with it as it is. If the editor says, okay, there's something of merit here, it needs to go out for peer review, they ship it out to peer review. That's usually 3. It varies. 3 people, often recommended by the author. It's not your buddies. This is an anonymous process usually, anyways. But you don't, you don't send it out to your friends who you know are going to be nice. You don't want to. In fact, you want your paper to be sent out to the most hostile audiences you can in reality, simply because that makes your paper better. But you send it out to 3 people. This is why I've recently participated in this process. I was recently asked by a journal to review a paper. I reviewed the paper. I'll show you a clip right here. This is an actual manuscript that I recently reviewed. I've blurred it out because it's not published yet. It's not my material to show you all. Now you look here, it is corresponding to each line in the document. There's numbers that correspond to each line. I will use those, if you look here, in order to so the author knows exactly which specific line in the document I was referring to. I go through, look at each of those, and I write comments, suggestions, whatever regarding that. And then following that, a suggestion to the editor about my belief on whether this paper should be accepted or rejected, and so on. Okay, so following this review process, now I go through and I look at it and I say, rejected. This paper's not worth reviewing. Or, in this case, I say, accepted. Paper, I recommend acceptance of this paper, with the following things that need to be changed in it before it'll get my approval. Now, usually there's 2 other people doing the same thing. The editor takes those and looks at it and goes, okay, you guys all agreed on this point. Actually, only this guy here says reject. These 2 say accept. We're going to send it out to another reviewer, maybe, rather than just outright reject it. Things like that. If there's disagreements, it can go this process. After this process, the paper then counts as accepted. It's accepted. It's shipped back to the author. The author then makes the revisions if needed, goes through, makes all of those revisions that are suggested, sends it back to the editor again, then it's accepted for publication. Once it's accepted for publication, then it's just a waiting game until, because typically these journals have long, it could be 6 months from the time, or longer, a year and 2 years in some cases, from the time you submit your paper until the time you actually get the journal with your paper in it. So that's peer review. It's a good process. It really works. Okay, it's got flaws, but it works. So, all right. Hope this is helpful.